Anu sat on the worn floral sofa, the cushions long since flattened by years of family life, and watched the dust motes dance in the late afternoon sunbeam. This modest living room, with its familiar scent of lemon polish and burnt rice, had been her sanctuary. But lately it felt less like home and more like an empty stage. It had been years since her parents' sudden departure, a gaping wound that had never truly healed. Fola, my older brother, had stepped into the role of provider with a fierce determination that had always made my chest swell with pride. He was only 16 then, a boy with a man's burden, but he carried it with a grace that was both beautiful and heartbreaking. His broad shoulders, once slim and gangly, had become a fortress for me and my younger sister Ife. He worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat, his hands calloused and his eyes often bloodshot from exhaustion. I remembered a time when I had pined for a human hair wig for a school event. I knew we couldn't afford it, so I kept my desire to myself, but Fola, with his uncanny ability to read my silent wishes, had found a way. He'd used the money he'd been saving for a down payment on a car, and the look of pure joy on my face when he handed me the box had been worth every sacrifice to him. He was the best brother anyone could ask for, a protector who would fight anyone who dared to hurt us. But then came Chioma. I first saw her through a cracked window pane as Fola introduced her to Ife and me. Her name, meaning "good God," seemed a cruel irony. She was an arresting woman, tall and willowy, with a sleek, polished look that seemed out of place in our humble home. Her skin was the color of rich mahogany, her eyes sharp and obsidian, and her smile, though bright, never quite reached them. It was a practiced, perfect smile. She wore a tailored crimson dress that clung to her figure, and her hair was a cascade of black waves that smelled faintly of expensive perfume. Fola, standing beside her, looked utterly besotted, his usual stoic expression replaced with a goofy, almost boyish grin. The change wasn't sudden. It was a slow, creeping vine that wrapped itself around Fola and choked the life out of our family routines. Our Friday movie nights, a tradition since our parents' passing, disappeared. The long walks we used to take to the market, talking and laughing, became a distant memory. Even the simple act of eating together at the small dining table was a rarity. I should have been happy for him. He deserved happiness. But a cold knot of suspicion had begun to form in the pit of my stomach. Chioma had a way of monopolizing his attention without saying a word. She would subtly lean into him, her hand resting lightly on his arm, and all of Fola's focus would shift to her, leaving Ife and me in the shadows. He started dressing differently, abandoning his comfortable t-shirts for crisp, expensive shirts. He bought a new phone, then a new car. Money, which had always been a tight, carefully managed resource, seemed to flow freely. When I asked where it was all coming from, he would just laugh it off, saying he'd gotten a promotion. I wanted to believe him, but I saw the stress lines etched deeper on his forehead, the way his hands trembled slightly when he wasn't looking. My investigation started with small things. I'd listen in on their phone calls, but they were always in hushed tones, Chioma's voice a silky whisper I could barely make out. I'd watch her when she thought no one was looking. There was a coldness in her eyes, a calculating glint that contradicted her warm exterior. One evening, I noticed a faint scar on her wrist, a thin white line that looked like a healed knife wound, partially hidden by her gold bracelet. She saw me looking, and her smile faltered for a fraction of a second before it returned, unnervingly bright. She adjusted her bracelet, covering the mark. My gut told me something was wrong. Fola was a good man, but he was also naive in matters of the heart. He loved with the same fierce intensity he used to protect us. Chioma, I feared, was taking advantage of that. The true horror began when I found the bank statements. Fola had always been meticulous about his finances, a habit born of necessity. I was looking for a misplaced receipt for a school project and stumbled upon a folder in his desk. The statements showed huge, unexplained withdrawals, and not just from his savings, but from a joint account that was meant for Ife's future education. My hands shook as I scrolled through the pages. Thousands of naira gone. The dates corresponded exactly to the timeline of Chioma's arrival in his life. I confronted him, not with the full truth, but with a plea. Fola, are you okay? You seem different. Is everything all right with Chioma? He looked at me with a tired, distant expression. Everything's perfect, Anu. Better than perfect. She understands me. That was the worst part. He felt he had to justify his happiness with her, as if I was against it. His love for her was blinding him. I knew I couldn't let this go on. I had to find out who Chioma really was. My search began online. Chioma had a minimal social media presence. One profile, a few perfect curated pictures, nothing about
her family or past. It was like she had just appeared out of thin air. I started digging deeper, using the one piece of information I had, a small, personalized necklace she wore with the initials CN. The N, I assumed, was her last name. It was a long shot, but I was desperate. I spent sleepless nights, fueled by coffee and a growing sense of dread, sifting through public records, news articles, and business registries. Then, I found something. A news article from 3 years ago, buried deep in an old local newspaper archive. The headline sent a jolt of ice through my veins. Local con. Woman sentenced for fraud. The article detailed a scheme where a woman had befriended a wealthy businessman, charmed him, and then fleeced him of a significant amount of money before disappearing. The woman's name was Chioma. Nkechi. The picture was grainy, but the sharp obsidian eyes and the perfect, cold smile were unmistakable. And there, on her wrist, was the faint scar. My heart hammered against my ribs. This wasn't just a woman Fola was in love with. She was a predator. I needed to tell Fola, but I knew he wouldn't believe me. He would think I was jealous, that I was trying to ruin his happiness. I had to be careful. I printed the article, leaving it on his desk, hoping he would find it and see the truth for himself. He did. The next morning, I found him in the living room, the article crumpled in his hand, his face a mask of betrayal and shock. His shoulders, my fortress, seemed to sag under an unbearable weight. Anu, what is this? His voice was low, shaky. I sat beside him, taking his trembling hand in mine. Fola, please. Listen to me. She's not who you think she is. He didn't speak for a long time. He just stared at the crumpled paper, the vibrant images of Chioma's fraudulent past staring back at him. I can't believe it. I know, I whispered. I'm so sorry. That was when we heard the front door open. Chioma walked in, her face a mask of feigned concern. She saw us, the paper in Fola's hand, and her perfect smile vanished. Her obsidian eyes narrowed, no longer a polished facade, but a cold, hard stone. The pretense was over. You, she said, her voice a hiss, pointing a perfectly manicured finger at me. You just had to mess things up, didn't you? Fola finally found his voice. Chioma, what is this? Who are you? She laughed, a chilling, joyless sound. I'm the one who finally made you happy. Fola. The one who made you feel like a man, not just a babysitter for your sisters. It was all so easy. Her words were like daggers, and I watched as Fola's face twisted in pain and anger. The man who had been my rock was crumbling before my eyes. He looked at me. Then at Aoife, who had just walked in, her innocent eyes wide with fear. He saw what he had almost lost. Chioma's eyes darted around the room, a feral look of a cornered animal. She saw the open front door, and in a flash, she was gone, her crimson dress a smear of color against the street. Fola didn't try to stop her. He just sat there, his head in his hands, defeated. I didn't say anything, just held his hand, the paper still clutched in his other one. It was over. The shadow of Chioma had passed, but it had left a deep, painful wound. It would take time to heal. But we would heal together, just like we always had. He was my brother, my protector, and now, he needed me to be his. The house was quiet again, the way it used to be. The dust motes still danced in the sun, but now, the room didn't feel so empty. It felt like home again.